What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing, I think, one of the most widely contested discussions that gardeners have between themselves, and that is, do you really have to fertilize, and what are the repercussions of not fertilizing? So we're going to talk about that in today's episode. Let's go. All right, so the first thing I want to do is kind of define what fertilizer is, because a lot of you think fertilizer has to come in a small bag like this, and it has to be super concentrated and really high in the NP and K. Fertilizer, as it's defined, is quite literally any type of nutrient that aids in plant growth. So this could be nitrogen, this could be phosphorus, this could be potassium, but it could also be a whole host of other trace minerals as well. Trace minerals like iron or magnesium or calcium, right? Those are all trace minerals as well that can aid in plant growth. And so those can all be fertilizers. Now, where the misconception really begins is compost a fertilizer? Well, compost is a soil amendment, but there's a fertilizer aspect to it. And so when you look at what compost is, in my opinion, compost is intended to amend the soil. It's meant to soften the soil, increase drainage, increase aeration, incorporate in beneficial bacteria and fungi, which help to help plants thrive, help the root systems to become larger and more developed. It's not necessarily to feed your crops. And that's really where my belief comes in, because I've seen gardeners basically just apply compost. And yeah, if you apply the same amount of compost every single year, you are probably going to be fine. I don't think that anyone is going to refute that, right? You had tons of compost. I think your plants can survive on compost alone. But my problem comes in with sourcing that much compost. All right, so like I said, sourcing all of that compost is possible, and if you source it all, there can be enough residual nutrients in that compost to feed your plants. But in my opinion, it's a little bit unrealistic, because in our garden at least, we'll grow plants in the spring. You might plant something like beets in the spring. Once I harvest those, I might plant something like green beans in the summer. And then once I harvest those, I might go back to things like beets, or I might plant a fall harvest of cabbage or something like that. And so I typically will have 2 to 4 successions of plants in a raised bed. And every single time you grow a crop, you need to remineralize. Well, if your remineralization source is compost, you're going to have to do that multiple times a year. Now, combine that with the fact that these beds here are 4 foot by 12 foot. So they're 48 square feet and they're a foot deep. So they're 48 cubic feet. And that's roughly 2 yards of soil. 2 yards of soil is a lot of soil per bed. Every year, each bed will compact by right around 25%. Soil just kind of decomposes, it weathers, it breaks down, plants take it up, you pull some soil out when you pull the plants out at the end of the year, and so soil leaves your bed. And so if I wanted to remineralize and give all the soil back to my beds, top them off completely, I'd have to be adding roughly a half a yard of soil to every single one of my raised beds. And so over the course of all my raised beds, I have a yard, I have 2 yards, I have 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards of compost. 7 yards of compost. You might think, oh, it's just a half a yard of compost. It can't be that much. A half a yard of compost isn't a terrible amount. This bag of compost here, which I use to kind of just top it off when my compost pile has run out, which it has. That's the other thing too. We can only generate so much compost on site. And so the compost we have, I end up going out and buying some bags of compost. So if this bag of compost was applied to this bed, I would need 10 of these bags to top off this one bed. So now, okay, well, it's just a half a yard. Okay, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140 bags. 140 bags. I don't know about you. I don't want to rely on 140 bags of bag compost to give all the nutrients for my plants. So where do I turn? That's where fertilizer comes in. So once you have the soil quality that's already where you want it, which is our case here, our soil quality is amazing, you don't necessarily need to keep topping off with more and more compost. Sure, we will add a little bit of compost every single year in what's called the 10% rule, but that's just to retain the quality that we have. You see, when we first built all these raised beds, we brought in 30 yards of compost, and we used 30 yards of compost to basically top them all off so that the soil quality was exactly what we wanted, almost instantly. We didn't have to do any soil building to actually get the soil quality where we wanted it. We just trucked it in. We did that one time. It absolutely stunk. We only did it once, like ripping off a Band-Aid. Get it done, get it over with, and then it's done. So once the soil quality was what we wanted, now all we have to do is just retain that soil quality. And that's really where we rely on compost that we generate on site and occasionally getting some bagged soil like this bagged compost here. And so what we do is what's called the 10% rule. To fill up this raised bed here with just bagged compost, it would be about 10 bags of bagged compost, or 10% of that would be 1 bag. So we're gonna add 1 bag to this soil since it's already the quality that we want it to be. We're just retaining the quality, right? We're retaining the aeration, we're retaining the water holding capabilities, we're retaining the nutrient, the nutrient levels, we're retaining the beneficial bacteria and fungi, and we're retaining that with just 10% of the amount that we would normally need. Then we're relying the rest on fertilizer. The fertilizer is going to bring all of the nutrients to the party. That's what the plants are actually going to grow with when they actually start growing. And so we can apply this at multiple times throughout the season. It's just, this is in the spring to top the beds off. We might top them off in the fall as well, but the fertilizer component is what gives our plants the food to grow. And so we can do this in the spring, we can do this in the summer, we can do this in the fall. Whenever our plants are turned over to another crop, we can fertilize. And because this is so concentrated, we can actually save a ton of money. And how this actually is broken down is if each one of these raised beds took 10 bags of soil, each one of these bags costs $3, and there's about 140 bags needed for this entire garden. That's roughly about $420 worth of bagged compost. It's pretty expensive. I don't want to spend that much. What I'd rather do is rely on the 10% rule. Start with really good compost, right? Start with that, rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with, have good quality soil. 10% rule says I need about 1 bag per bed. So I add about 1 bag per bed, and then I get that over with. That's $30 worth of compost. Then I rely on fertilizer. And to fertilize all of these beds for basically the whole growing season, it's going to cost me roughly about $150 worth of fertilizer cost. And so because I'm using an organic-based fertilizer that's super potent, very beneficial to all my plants, no matter what I'm growing, I can simply take my fertilizer. This is VigaGrow, it's a veganic fertilizer, but it's well balanced. I can take my fertilizer and I can just throw it over top of my beds like that. Then I work that into the top 1 or 2 inches of soil. My beds are fertilized. They have all of the food that the plants need to grow in a cost-effective and labor-mindful way. Because I don't know about you, but lugging around 140 bags of soil will take a toll on anybody. It's a ton of time, it's a ton of toll on the body, on the joints, and I'd much rather spend more time out in the garden because my time is worth more than 140 bucks, to be honest. And so the amount that I'm saving in using fertilizer to supplement the nutrients is way more than I would be gaining by just going with pure compost. So again, this is my opinion and my opinion only. I know that a lot of you will have differing opinions, but again, that's what makes gardening amazing, is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And I know as well that a lot of people are going to say, well, won't the fertilizer component in one of those bags supplement? And again, the answer is it may, but I would much rather rely on it will, right? This I know will supplement all the nutrients. This may supplement all the nutrients. This is very, very gentle. The nutrients in this is a 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. It's only 0.5% nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now granted, is that enough to grow plants? Absolutely. But I don't know if it's enough to grow plants all season long. I don't know what the repercussions is if we get a heavy rain. Some of those nutrients are going to be lost due to leaching. Some of those nutrients will just be used up when plants are growing. And because I then am going to be growing another crop here, another succession of plants sometime down the road, I'm either going to have to turn to another bag of compost and hope that that's enough nutrients, or I say my soil quality is great. I know that I've topped it off. I know that the soil quality will continue to be great as long as I continue to have the focus of remineralizing and retaining the soil quality that I have, still while giving the plants the nutrients that they need to thrive. And I have no problem doing that in my garden. And that's my stance. And that's how I save a lot of money and have great results in the process. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a thumbs up there. Subscribe if you haven't already. We have lots more gardening content coming out. And yeah, so I'll catch you guys on the next episode. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care, guys.